very honored and very much looking forward to having him here on stage. Please give him a warm welcome, Brian Kalma.
Hello, is this working? Cool. Thanks for allowing me to be here in Holland, my third time. Always exciting. So I thought I'd start off by explaining a little bit more about Gemvara, so kind of give some context to what we're about to talk about. Gemvara is a fine jeweler that sells customizable jewelry. If you were to go to our website, you would see a lot of imagery of jewelry. The interesting thing is that every image you see is a digital render. There's not one photograph. The reason why is because we recognized that there was a big, huge market opportunity in fine jewelry, and that was getting people actually what they want, as opposed to taking inventory and finding something that was close enough to what you were looking for. And that's why Gemvara started. But it's important to remember and understand that Gemvara is selling customizable jewelry. It's an experience that allows you to go in, choose a design, and decide what metals you want, decide what stones you want, decide all the attributes of the product that you want. Only then will you see an image of that as it's digitally rendered on demand. Only once you buy that piece will we actually go create it and then send it to you. So we have zero inventory and zero photography. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we talk through this. I'd like to ask you all two questions, if you don't mind participating. If you could raise your hand, and for those of you who have a personal Pinterest account, I would love to see a show of hands. Now, for the companies you work at, does the company you work at have a Pinterest account? A little bit of a smaller number. Okay, good, that helps with some context. So let's just jump right into it. We all know what Pinterest is, but how powerful, how popular is it? So I recognize some of this may be illegible. We'll be posting this for you all to download, but let me talk you through a little bit of this. Pinterest has seen 145% growth since the beginning of this year. And that was actually just 2 months ago where that data was pulled. It's probably exponentially higher by now. It's real. It's not going anywhere. It's starting to really eat into the market share that places like Facebook, Twitter have owned in the social space. In fact, what we're seeing now is that Pinterest is driving 17% of all companies' average revenue coming from social channels, whereas just a year ago, it was responsible for just 1% of revenue via social channels. And it is driving insanely high intent shoppers as well. So we're seeing people who are 10% more likely to buy if they come via Pinterest versus any other social network. Really interesting stats. But I want to explain a little bit about how we use Gemvara, how we use Pinterest at Gemvara. First off, important to note, it is our number1 source of free traffic right now. And I use quotes for free because nothing is technically free. We have people who in the company we hire to manage Pinterest explicitly and exclusively, but we're not paying dollars for traffic like we do, say, with Google paid search. We are getting tons of people coming at very little cost, just manpower cost. We're also seeing a huge amount of new customers finding us because of pins on Pinterest. Now, it's also important to recognize, and we'll talk about this in a little bit greater detail soon, is that there's two types of traffic we see coming from Pinterest. There's people coming from our pin boards that Gemvara has put up, and there's traffic coming from pins that our users have pinned on our site, and both function very differently. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But in general, the activity we see from traffic coming from customer pins is more valuable than when we as a company are pinning. We realized that after a couple of months. And as such, we've adjusted our strategy to drive more of our customers to Pinterest first, before even driving them to our site. And again, I'll go into that in a few moments. And we are seeing some interesting average order value increases that are above what the general market is seeing. We're seeing 20% average order value increase for traffic coming from Pinterest than on average from our site. Excuse me. So let me talk a little bit about why we use Pinterest, and we'll go into some further detail as we go along. 3 core reasons strategically: trend spotting, curation, and building relationships. Pinterest is an amazing real-time tool to understand what is really captivating and interesting users at that moment. There's not much else out there that could tell you in the actual heat of the moment what products people are finding interesting and appealing. We are monitoring that like crazy. Since we do sell customizable jewelry where you can go on the site and customize anything you want, we will take these trends and create permutations of products to align with these trends we see emerging. We also are using Pinterest to find influential customers, trendy people effectively. We are finding which people are posting things, and because of how Google Analytics can capture Pinterest traffic, we can distill traffic down to a single person. For example, if we get 10,000 visits a day from Pinterest, I know if it's person A or person B who drove 500 visits, or another one who drove 10,000 visits. That is an incredibly powerful thing. It allows us to reach out to these people and form relationships with these influencers. Curation. We use Pinterest to be able to tell product stories. It's very appealing to us to be able to use another medium other than our site to promote our products. So, for example, in the month of May, I guess emerald is the birthstone for the month of May. We will, for example, during that month, create pin boards of all products emerald, because people will be searching for those sorts of things during that month. That is just an example. And relationships. Historically, we've used Facebook and Twitter to have conversations with our customers, but we're actually finding that Pinterest is allowing us to have more meaningful conversations with customers about specific products. It's becoming very powerful for us. And those product-focused conversations allow us to have very pointed conversations. So, I want to talk about something. You see this product up here? You may love it, you may hate it. I don't know, I'm not a fan of it personally. But what we realized is that someone pinned this once, right? It was a relatively non-popular product, but someone pinned it. And all of a sudden, over the course of like several days, we started selling a lot of these. And we were kind of scratching our head and trying to figure out why. Like, why is this happening? Why is this like ugly piece selling like crazy? And we started looking at our analytics and we realized, holy cow, like Pinterest is doing this. Someone pinned this, and then 6,000 people repinned it, and all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of people got saw this product in front of them. We took that and we said, okay, maybe there's something interesting about this product that we didn't think was a good seller. So we took that product, created an image, a hero image on their homepage that is just what you see behind me, that kind of celebrates the popularity of this product, but we intentionally decided to build this story more around Pinterest than us, the Gemvara brand. We thought that would lend credibility to the fact that it's not a product we're trying to push, it's a product that you all told us is very popular. This also, you'll see there's a follow us button. This was our way of also getting more users to follow our pin boards on Pinterest by using a popular product. So it was very interesting. It was our most engaged homepage ever as it relates to click-throughs, ever. So let's talk a little bit about trend spotting. What you see here is a bunch of boards. For those of you who use Pinterest, you know already that you could look at pins, you could look at boards, or you could view people. When we're doing trend spotting, we're using it to actively figure out what people are interested in within the market. So we'll scrape different types of boards and manually sometimes, and sometimes using tools, and we'll show you these tools towards the end of the presentation, pull out specific trends that we may not have otherwise realized are occurring in real time. So, for example, here, there's a jewelry board that someone created that has gotten some of the most repins and follows of any jewelry board on Pinterest. We are using that board to help tell us what styles customers in the marketplace, not our customers, but potential customers, are interested in. So as a result, we're searching boards to see what consumers find appealing. And we're using that to help guide how we merchandise our site. Proof in the fact that if you remember that homepage I showed you, that never would have happened if we weren't on top of this trend emerging on Pinterest. It became a very powerful tool for us to promote that product. Another thing that we tend to often do at Gemvara is, now that we're totally and 100% supportive of the power of Pinterest, there's a dedicated section of the site that explicitly changes based on the popularity of our products on Pinterest. And we call that section Trending on Pinterest. And again, you'll see that product there again. No matter what we do, we could customize this thing to be the ugliest thing you could think of. It is the most popular thing that customers are pinning and repinning nonstop. But moreover, we do want to use Pinterest to diversify our product mix and get more things in front of more people. So this section has been an incredibly powerful tool for us, as customers are going to this section to ultimately see what the broader market is interested in. We have finding something quite interesting about this section. Users who come to our site who are not Pinterest fans, or rather who are not on Pinterest yet, will visit this section of our site, and majority of these folks will click the Follow Gemvara on Pinterest button. As a result, we're creating this loop of traffic and loop of followship, because the more people we get to follow us on Pinterest, the higher likelihood we're going to have of them repinning our things, and thus the cycle begins. Another way that we use Pinterest, and this is to me one of the most exciting things that we do, and it's not so, what we do here is not so much about driving customers to us, but using Pinterest as a vehicle to aid customers in their buying decisions. So we get about 100 phone calls a day. Maybe 75% of these phone calls, give or take, are people asking us advice on what they should get for their loved one. We'll get people saying, hey, my girlfriend likes pink and she likes flowers and whatever. Do you have any suggestions of what you would recommend we buy for her? And instead of us being salesy and pushing people towards our site to give them suggestions, we actually take the customer's name, email address, and we create a pin board for them on Pinterest with ideas that could be of interest to the person they're buying for. This is good in two regards. One, it gets more of our product out there, but also gets our customers more engaged and feeling like we're being a little bit more authentic, because we're not there just trying to shove you through our sales funnel and tell you to buy a certain thing. We're actually driving you to another trusted medium and using that medium as an authenticity vehicle to make your purchase. This, it's a nice warming, welcoming feeling when someone who's calling is ready to drop a few $1,000s, doesn't feel like we're just trying to sell stuff to them. But if we're there to help them, even if they never buy the product from us, when customers call asking for advice, creating pin boards for them is generating an incredibly huge amount of loyalty. We have these customers now ultimately sharing these pin boards. We have other customers jumping in and looking at these pin boards and commenting. We've realized that acting as a concierge for our customers using Pinterest has become one of our most exciting bits. It's personally my favorite use of Pinterest that we have. But it's not necessarily the biggest traffic driver for us, but it certainly keeps our customers engaged with the added benefit of getting more folks exposed to products. Also, we use Pinterest in another interesting way. Now this is very specific to the way our business runs. You see up here a whole bunch of products. They're effectively the same digital render with different components added into it. So every once in a while, we'll create a pin board that's of one design, styled an infinite amount of different ways. It does a couple of things for us. One is that, again, like this, like I said earlier, it gets more and more product out into the pinosphere, whatever the word would be for Pinterest. But more importantly, it communicates our capabilities. Without even saying it, one could infer that this is a site that will allow you to create any permutation or any style of this design. So we've found this as an incredible tool for us to communicate our brand value. I think there's lots of companies out there that could get creative and think about doing something similar to communicate the actual value your brand brings. For us, it's kind of simple and a no-brainer. But more importantly, I think Pinterest is all about self-expression. We could use Pinterest all we want, for customer care, for concierge, for giving people ideas, but ultimately, you have to give your customers the tools to express themselves, because the overwhelming majority of traffic that we see comes from customer pins, not what we're doing. What we're doing is an added benefit for customers, but well over 80% of traffic coming from Pinterest is coming from random people pinning things. Now here's a quick preview of our customization module. So if you come to our site and you saw this ring, you can go in and choose any attribute, any stone, any metal, and once you've selected it, once you've created it, you've effectively created a new permutation on your site. When people do this, majority of people will pin it. The interesting thing about that is that they have a personal level of pride around the thing they created. So we see exponentially greater pin rates when people are pinning a piece that they've created versus pinning a piece they've just stumbled upon on their site. Very, very, very powerful, because there's an incredibly huge tie back down to personal expression, which again, I would say is primarily what Pinterest is all about. I want to talk a little bit about traffic. This is a trend that we've seen over the past 6 months. We did have a little dip at one point, but we are seeing exponential traffic growth from Pinterest. I mean, our chart goes back really more 12 months, and I'm sorry for excluding the actual traffic numbers, but I was forced to. But I promise, this is well into the double digits percentage of all traffic coming to our site, with high intent to purchase and a high level of interest from customers. Sales, let's talk about that. So you'll see up on the wall here that there's a trend line also for sales. Now, of course, there's a big gap here. Like, it's our dream to figure out how to get this red line closer to here. But for us, what we're really excited about is that the sales trends are pretty, kind of sort of falling in line with the traffic trends we're seeing coming from Pinterest as well. Again, supporting the fact that there's a huge amount of high intent users coming to us from Pinterest. So some of this may be hard to read. I'll explain it. I do apologize about the size of it. But product views. So as I was saying earlier, we have thousands of designs. Any of them can be styled any way. If you do the math, we can basically have several 100 million different ways you can buy jewelry on our site. And yes, there are certain designs that sell more than others. But what Pinterest has done is really focused on exploding that long tail of products that never really get found on our site, because we've always been so focused on pushing the designs that are just our biggest, that we thought or knew were our biggest sellers. But Pinterest has totally broken that dynamic down. And just like that kind of uglyish ring I showed you earlier, that is one of those products that falls very nicely into this bucket. All of a sudden, this huge amount of additional products are being viewed on our site that never were seeing the light of day. We have new styles and new designs being purchased because of people pinning. And then sales attribution. What we're seeing is that the last touch that someone has being via Pinterest is the most powerful for us. So roughly 45% of the traffic coming from Pinterest is the person's last touch with a product of ours. So let me explain that a little bit. A user, it takes up to 5-ish weeks for someone to make a purchase of fine jewelry, generally speaking. Every company will see slight differences. During that 5 weeks, there's a lot of things customers are doing, right? They're looking on Pinterest, they're looking at competitors, they're searching on Google. If the last thing they see is on Pinterest, 45% of these folks are effectively converting. It's pretty freaking interesting. And then First Touch also is pretty exciting. We're seeing that new customers are finding us via Pinterest. Pretty interesting stat as well. But to seal the deal, this is what's most exciting to me, to make sure we're always there. So as someone is getting close to the end of their sales cycle, they see our products, they have a huge propensity to convert and ultimately purchase So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time talking about the tools. So I've talked about some strategies and tactics that we employ over at Gemvara. Now, much of what we do manually, right? We do comb pin boards on our own, but there are also tools we use to help us determine how effective our efforts are. So the next few slides, we'll talk about some of these tools. And again, feel free to jot some of these down, but at the same time, we will post this so you could check this stuff on your own. There's one out there called Pinfluencer. Pinfluencer does a great job at identifying which specific people in the Pinterest world tend to garner the highest level of influence. At the same time, it tells us which pins are trending. It allows us visibility into which of our boards are becoming the most viral. So it's a pretty appealing tool for us, and it's, to me, probably of all the things we're going to go through, the one must-have if you are looking for an analytics or a suite of tools for Pinterest. At the same time, there's this one called PinReach, which I feel is almost as good as Pinfluencer. Very similar data and very similar information you can get from this one. I would say that Pinfluencer is probably 6 months ahead of what these guys are up to, but again, another incredible tool if you're looking to find basic analytics on what's happening on Pinterest for you guys. Have anyone heard of Hello Society? Okay, Hello Society is incredibly interesting. It's not exclusive to Pinterest, but it's a paid service where you go to them and you tell Hello Society some of your goals. And what they do is find highly influential people in the social space, in this case, namely Pinterest, and will arrange these highly influential people to pin certain products of yours. They guarantee a certain amount of repins. They guarantee a certain amount of traffic. If the amount of repins and traffic do not happen, you get some of your money back. So what's pretty interesting about this is it allows you to test the waters. It is a little expensive. It allows you to test the waters on, very easy entrance way into creating an influencer sort of program. We're probably seeing, from an influencer perspective, the best success with Hello Society than any other program we're working with. There's another one called Pin Booster, which falls into the family of general influencers. It is a little bit more advertising driven and not so much about connecting you with actual users, but it's a network of, it's effectively, you kind of think about what paid or promoted posts on Facebook are, kind of the same thing. Although, Pinterest being younger than Facebook still hasn't created the brand network that Twitter or Facebook have. So my suspicion is that this changes dramatically once Pinterest launches their brand platform, which I hear is not that far away. So Pinnerly, another optimization tool, pretty interesting, allows you to put certain goals into your pins, and it will automatically optimize, posts for the right time of day. Because, if you're posting at 8 in the morning in New York, you're missing the entire West Coast worth of traffic to see your feed. What these guys do is help automate the process and making sure that your posts are happening at the most effective time. Really, really powerful as well. And then this one's pretty interesting. Everyone here is probably familiar with Google Alerts and things of that nature that will send you a note or an email when your brand or your name is mentioned on Google. This is similar as it relates to Pinterest. You could set pin alerts so you can get a report once a day or an email as it happens every time a product of yours is pinned. This is pretty interesting. It could also be exceptionally annoying if you're getting thousands of your products pinned a day and you have your alerts set to on demand. You're going to be getting 1,000 emails. But what's incredible is that seeing what people are interested in real time is just mind-boggling, and it's a really good research tool that we're finding pretty exciting. And then there's another one called Pinstamatic, which is pretty interesting. If you don't think you're necessarily a creative person, or you don't have a creative team, or you just want to have some fun, Pinstamatic allows you to essentially take photos you want to pin, and it layers on a whole bunch of tools, effects, little thingies, if you will, to make your images more appealing. And lets them post to Pinterest really quickly. We're actually finding this to be a fun tool for when our marketing team wants to get certain things pinned without having to go through creative. They're able to add a little flair to their pin. So for us, this has become one of the fun tools in the office that we use. Now, Pinterest, there's so much that one can do with Pinterest, so much that brands can do with Pinterest. I think the important thing for everyone to know is, Pinterest is young and they're evolving quickly. They're onto something. Whereas Facebook and Twitter have had a really hard time cracking the e-commerce field, Pinterest is the thing we've been waiting for. Now, at the same time, I do suspect you'll see, a lot of copycats starting to emerge, which we already are seeing. There's one called Wishwall.me, so it's wishwall.me, which I think has taken the trend that Pinterest has created and brought it one step further. They are actually and actively promoting purchasing through their platform. So, whereas on Pinterest you'll see a product, you'll see comments, you'll see likes, and then you have to click through it to go to your site. Wishwall is interesting. They explicitly put buy buttons on all the products. So they've put a stake in the ground and said, we're trying to become an affiliate. We're closer to commerce than Pinterest is. So at Gemvara, we're already starting to see some traffic coming in from Wishwall, highly qualified traffic. So it is one I would pay attention to. The unfortunate part is it's not as pretty as Pinterest. It's not as simple, but it's working. Also, it's really important to recognize that every brand is going to have to use Pinterest in their own and unique way. So I still follow Zappos a lot, having a long tenure there. I watch what they're doing on Pinterest, and they're doing some very interesting things in their own unique way. So if you went to expo.zappos.com, I encourage everyone to do that. You'll see a Pinterest widget they've created, and what they're doing is taking all the products that are being pinned on Zappos and creating a real-time feed of these products on the Zappos website. Really interesting stuff. A company like that, that makes more sense for them because they have, hundreds of thousands of products. None of it's customizable. It's really all about what's happening now and the popularity around those products. So I definitely recommend everyone checking that out, and you can find that at expo.zappos.com. So, I went through a lot of information. We are going to, do some Q&A right now. I definitely, appreciate you all giving me the time to be here and give my spiel. And I assume we'll do some questions now. So thank you very much.
Okay, let's give him a big hand of applause.
Hi, my name is Guy van Lamsweerde, Shenza.com. Pretty interesting what you told us. I'm not too knowledgeable about Pinterest, but what is the penetration of Pinterest in Europe versus the States? And do you see as Gemvara any interest for you in Europe for how to use Pinterest? Or
I don't quite know what the penetration is in Europe for Pinterest, but I do know that shopping habits are definitely different. And I don't really have a good, strong opinion on how to be predictive around what Pinterest means to the European shopping community. But for us, we've seen a spattering. We ship internationally, so we've seen some purchasing happening from Europe where there was where the source came from Pinterest. But beyond that, I don't have a great answer. I do know that Pinterest is actively going to be trying to get set up out here.
Any other questions at this point? Otherwise, I have one. This morning we had Ace Jewelers here, and we had a CEO debate, and one of the things that he stated was for online jewelers and maybe for more pure players, it's impossible not to have a multi-channel approach. Therefore,
I've heard that before.
So what is your opinion about that?
Well, I don't agree with it. I would say that one of the reasons Gemvara started was a recognition of a few things. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons was because there's a general sentiment that people tend to settle on the fine jewelry they purchase. They find something pretty close to what they want. When we recognized that, we thought to ourselves, close enough does not have to be good enough. There's an opportunity here to break the mold. At the same time, the research we conduct tells us over and over again that the main reason people are coming to us is they do not trust walking into physical jewelry stores. They do not trust that they're going to get the same deal as the person who walked in before them or after them, with probably the exception of the places like Tiffany or De Beers that just mark things up like crazy and basically will send you, will give each person the same deal. But really it comes down to trust and inventory. People are saying they cannot find exactly what they want, or they just don't trust walking into a jewelry store. I'm not sure if anyone here has been to the jewelry district in New York City. I have. One of our offices is there, and I will tell you this, it is an incredibly stressful experience walking into a jewelry store. Now, that said, there's incredible power in being multi-channel, definitely. Brand awareness, that's going to help. Having a physical location is going to get your word out some more. Has anyone here heard of Warby Parker? Warby Parker is an incredible, say it one more time, incredible eyewear company out of New York City. They've been selling online for a couple of years. They're as old as we are at Gemvara. And they know their brand so well, they know their audience so well, and they just opened up a flagship store in New York City. Having happened to know these guys pretty well, I will say that the primary reason they opened these stores was to learn how people shop, and it's all of a sudden turned into an actual revenue vehicle for them. But I will say an interesting thing that we are considering at Gemvara is not necessarily opening up a physical store per se, but turning our office space into also a showroom so we can have more one-to-one interactions with our customers and get them feeling and using our customization engine. See, for us it'll be very difficult to have a physical store because we don't have any inventory whatsoever. So having a store would be pretty counter to what we're trying to do.
Okay, another question that I have. Do you see a difference between the new customers that you derive from Pinterest and versus the traditional paid marketing?
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. So it's a pretty interesting dichotomy we're in. So we, like many companies, you have to use paid search on Google. It's one of the best ways to capture traffic. It's an expensive way to capture traffic. But we're very keen on recognizing that traffic that comes from Pinterest versus traffic that's even coming from our paid search is converting more coming from Pinterest. Now that basically means we're desperate to figure out how to keep leveraging Pinterest as much as we possibly can. But the basic takeaway for us is that we are seeing higher conversion rates when people are coming from Pinterest versus coming from paid search. I think that has a lot to do with the visual nature of Pinterest. If Google paid ads could get a little bit more visual in nature, maybe feel a little less like an ad, perhaps that would change the environment. But for right now, man, it's incredible how much people from Pinterest are converting. I just sometimes wish I could throw more fuel on that fire and get more people coming.
So what does this mean for other social media sites? What is this going to mean for Facebook from your side of the
Yeah, I think what it means for places like Facebook or Twitter is that you're going to see them doing, I hate to use the word desperate, but maybe I will. You'll see some desperate actions from them to get more involved in e-commerce. So many companies, ourselves included, have tried so many different things on Facebook and Twitter from an e-commerce perspective. And yeah, we're seeing moderate results, but Pinterest is blowing these all out of the water, and I think you'll start seeing Facebook experimenting with more e-commerce related initiatives. I think you'll see a lot of that revolving around gifting, for example. Facebook has a wealth of incredible information about all of us in this room. They know when most of our birthdays are. It's an incredible e-commerce opportunity for them, to present possible birthday gifts for all of your friends to see before you come and purchase. I suspect you'll see things like that from Facebook in the near future. Twitter, I read something just the other day, and they said they are actively trying to get into the e-commerce space. So that was very vague. I don't know what that means, but I do think Pinterest has opened their eyes that there is a way to make it happen effectively.
All right. Let's see who has another question for Brian.
I have a question, a more practical thing. How do you organize this to make such a ring or something? And what about how do you organize that it fits?
Yeah.
the people.
Yeah.
And when you get returns when they doesn't fit,
Yeah.
you have to give the money back.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a good answer, I think.
Very good.
Well, first off, I'll say we haven't perfected that, but we do a couple of things to help. One is we actively will send people free ring sizers in the mail, a little thing, I guess the best way to describe it, in an envelope that allows you to measure your finger. And once you do that, we typically see people making a lot of purchases with the right size, because the size problem is one of the main reasons people aren't buying. Now, we've also instituted a really aggressive return policy will allow you to return an item up to 101 days after you got it, no questions asked. Now, remember this, we don't keep inventory. So when an item is returned, we will take the stones out, we will melt down the metal, and we reuse it all. In stark contrast, at both Zappos and at Gilt, returns were a big problem, up into the 35% range. This was inventory we had to try to sell again. And in high fashion, those trends go out really quickly. So we were then stuck with all this inventory, and that was the primary reason why those two companies couldn't scale as much. But for us, returns aren't necessarily a bad thing. Now we're too young to I guess analyze this for the long haul, but I'll say this: at Zappos, the return experience was so good and so simple that if you returned an item on your first purchase, you were 4 times more likely to purchase again. At Gemvara, we're monitoring that. We're monitoring to see if people who return an item, like because it didn't fit or something, have a high propensity to come back because of how lenient our policies are. A typical, inventoried experience couldn't do that. So for us, it's a interesting situation. But I'll tell you what, we still haven't perfected it. It's, still a work in progress.
One of the truly amazing things, if you really think about it, is that all the images that Brian showed on the screen, so every picture, so to speak, that you saw on the screen from a jewelry item was not a photography part of thing. It really was a digital image, so it did not exist. So it's just not there. It's not there. It's just made up by people who are really good in making up images, right?
Basically, yeah.
So there's no inventory at all. Do you know any other business outside of the jewelry business that has such a business scheme?
Wow.
And would it work? Would it work? Would it work with clothing? Would it work with other items?
Yeah, there's a couple that I would like to mention. Actually, in Boston, there's 2 incredible startups that have just come out. One of them is called Blank Label. It's men's dress clothing that it's effectively the digital version of walking into a custom tailor to have something made for you from scratch. It's called Blank Label. They are doing something very similar to what we're doing for men's shirts. And they haven't taken any funding yet. They've been around for 1.5 years and totally are killing it, doing an incredible job. But they deal with a similar dilemma, that I guess somewhere between what we at Gemvara deal with and Zappos, and that is you can't melt down fabric. It's already been cut. So when items are returned, they have not figured out a good way to clear that return merchandise. So that's the kind of difference in the clothing world. But there's another one called Bow and Drape, which is customizable women's clothing. And they just launched a Kickstarter campaign. You can check them out. And are doing very similar things to Blank Label and us as well. Women's clothing, though. I don't know, what's happening exactly here in Europe. I have to admit I'm not as savvy here, but there's a huge push for mass customization in the States, and companies are popping up all over the place that are all about, selling you products that are customized, personalized just to your specific needs. And man, that's heating up in a big way.
Okay, one more question here.
Hi, Jip de Lange from NOP. I just heard another gentleman say something about the conversion rates related to delivery time.
Mm-hmm.
How is it with your products? Because
Got it.
somebody else was telling me next day delivery is 50% extra conversion.
Yeah. That is a fantastic question, and probably the biggest conversation we have in the office on a daily basis. So the end of the day, many other companies out there have set the bar. You need to get an item within a couple of days of buying it online. Now, for us, there's long delivery dates because things are custom made. And the problem we're seeing is that I will say this, many customers who come to our site don't realize that these are being custom made. They think they're looking at photos, they think they're buying a physical piece, and then they call us up and say, could you please overnight this? I'm getting engaged tomorrow. And then we're like, oh shit, we can't. So it definitely hurts us. Now, where we're setting our sights on is not so much about trying to decrease the delivery time, but make it more clear that you're buying a piece that's custom made just for you. And we don't do a good job at that right now. If you went to the site, right now it's not terribly intuitive and recognizable that this doesn't exist until you create it. Anecdotally, and just with research, customers have told us, okay, if I understood that, I'd feel more comfortable. Now, the reality is, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're launching a new experience that's going to be communicating that effectively, and we'll see if that's going to help increase conversion. That said, I will say this, during the holiday season, we hire more jewelry creators, we reduce shipping time by half, and conversion goes through the roof. It is certainly an interesting dilemma, and I would say that we have experimented with putting more aggressive dates on the site, and we do see conversion increase, but sometimes we can't meet those dates, and it's a negative impact, a negative experience. That's one of the biggest problems we have. I fundamentally believe if we can get to the point where someone buys an item and they can get it 2 or 3 days later, there is no stopping us. But right now, on average, you will get your piece in 8 days from the moment you buy it, on average, which was faster than it took for De Beers to get me my wife's engagement ring, which was in inventory in another store.
All right, one final question. Okay.
All right, I like that.
What are your European ambitions for Gemfara?
Okay, going through my head here what I should say or shouldn't say. I would say that we definitely recognize there's an opportunity out here. There's copycats out here already. There's a place called Colors of Eden and a couple others that are doing very, very similar things. We do have a desire to be out here. We do have a desire to be the first big player in this field out here. So we are starting with experimentation around using our, more aggressively promoting our international shipping just to understand the market viability. But we certainly recognize there's an opportunity, and we're trying to figure out what that truly is. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see more aggressive marketing towards the European continent.
All right, let's give Brian Kammer a big hand of applause, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.